So just one last presentation today.
Thanks, buddy. Thanks a lot. Thanks. Cheers.
And we're going to end with a dentist. Sort of bring us back to reality. But what an interesting dentist. Dr. Steve Lin is sort of rewriting human psychology based on some anthropology of dental records here. And he takes us in places you don't quite expect. And so, Steve, Steve's getting mic'd up. It's, you know, when we look at all the potential presenters we could have, we really don't know what they're going to say. And so we invite them here to find out. So this one will be as much a surprise to me as to all of you, but it looks good. And once again, this is the last presentation. So after this, if you want to grab a book, the book room will be open. Some of the authors are still around, be available to sign books. And we're supposed to be out of the hotel, I think, about 1 o'clock or something like that, unless you have a late checkout. Anybody have any questions about closing process here? Or?
Is it going?
Let me just go back. I'll get you live on the screen.
Okay. Great.
Okay. Great to go.
Thanks, Will.
Steve Lin.
Thank you very much for that kind introduction, Walter. Can everyone hear me? Is that mic going? It's not quite there? Oh, there we go. Is that good? Okay. Walter's quite apt in saying, I feel like a little bit of a fish out of water here, but at the same time, I've learned to swim in the last couple of days, being around some of the special people at CPAK. And I've been and spoken a lot of conferences around the world, mainly health professionals, and I have to say that the topics and the type of thinking that is happening here at CPAK is quite unique for a number of reasons. And one of the main reasons is the dedication and application of Walter Cruttenden. I came across his work a few years ago, and I didn't realize how powerful ancient stories can be. And one thing that we're going to explore today, and there's been some amazing speakers. You had Robert, who's on some kind of savant level of mathematics, which is just mind-blowing. Alan Green, who's on a frequency somewhere between madness and insanity, and it's beautiful. But what we're seeing here is there's a level of human consciousness, and there's an ability of the human being that is awakening in all of us. And there's, people can tell us about pyramids and, measurements and even astronomy, but the real key lies within us. And if we don't know, we can look at the pyramids, but for us to change the world, we have to build a society that connects to those abilities that lie within us. And that's where I've seen my path converging with what Walter has been working on for so long, what everyone in this room has been working on, and that's understanding the human body. There is a part of this, and within all of these teaching, is understanding the human physiology in its true form. And so my presentation is the connection between the pineal gland in your brain and precession. And so these two very distant topics that actually connect in a very beautiful way when you look at it. And so this has been somewhat of an awakening process for myself. I'm a dentist by trade. I'm biomedically, I trained in biomedical science before dentistry. I went and looked in mouths up to my hands in saliva for 7 years. And I got out into the world and practicing dentistry, and I started to become a bit disillusioned with it quite quickly, because you learn to use your hands quickly, you apply all of these, you're a fix-it man as a dentist. And I didn't find this very satisfying, because my patients were asking me a lot of questions, why is this wisdom tooth impacted in this child and not this child? And why does my husband have no feelings yet I do? Why does this kid have so many holes and yet this sibling doesn't? I couldn't answer them. And I realized I was just fixing things. I was just patching things over. And it came to the point where I didn't know whether I could be a dentist for the rest of my life, because I wasn't sure if it was really fulfilling what I wanted to do on planet Earth. So I took some time off, and I went around the world and looked at how ancient societies and ancient societies' teeth were compared to the modern day. And so it culminated in writing a book called The Dental Diet, which you can grab, and which we're going to cover in the first part of this lecture. So we're going to squeeze a lot in here. And so my work in the last 10 years has been to, anyone heard of the functional medicine movement? Probably, so a handful of people, yeah. So functional medicine is basically a movement of people that have shown that the healthcare system doesn't understand the body. Very much like the archaeological, some people say the archaeological fraternity don't understand the history. We have the same problem in healthcare. And so what I saw is that there was this whole movement in the US particularly of healthcare providers that are fixing the body in a way that conventionally trained people weren't. So we're talking type 2 diabetes, obesity, all of the conditions that most people suffer from today, but they were missing the mouth. And so I started to look at this and I was like, wow, there's a huge piece here that I'm seeing every day that you can see in your mouth, that we are not connecting to this functional medicine community. And so that was my goal and my aspiration to the world, to be able to show that the mouth and the body are connected. And there's this beautiful way of healing yourself when you understand how to heal the body as the mouth as the signpost of disease. So part one, we're going to go through a dental anthropology, and this is a real rush through my work, which is, if you want to dive into it deeper, it's in my book, but you can also read online. In functional medicine, there's a lot of stuff online that you can read. Part two is the next part that it leads us deeper. This is the beauty of this work and the real curiosity that that I think is something that I realized last night at dinner, is that there's a lot of very learned people here, but something that I think that we all share is that we've read a lot, but we're very curious. And that's something that's driven me over the years, is that I want to know. I can't go to sleep with something nagging at me. I want to know what the answer is and why the hell we're here. And so I realized that understanding the human body in the way I did was providing some of those answers. So that's part two into the next evolution of this work. So let's go quickly through the mouth-body connection. What this is it's explaining to you human physiology in a way that you were never really told. So teeth are like tree rings. They hold your deepest inner story. Dental anthropologists know this because you read the dental anthropology, and all human history is nearly written in jawbones and teeth. So nearly everything we understand about our history, besides the archaeological, which is the much more recent, anything deeper, it's in bones and teeth. And so we hold our own history in our teeth. They're like tree rings. So your health, so when you're developing in your mother's womb to a growing child, your teeth grow like beautiful rings. And they hold, every time you peel them back, they tell your story. And they tell your deeper story too, your DNA, what your ancestors were doing, what your parents and grandparents were doing. They affect how your teeth grow. Dentistry, people have had somewhat of a negative experience with dentistry. And so I'm sure people are going to raise their hands to this, but every day in my practice, I have this term come to me. They walk into my room and they say, hello, I say, how's your day? Oh, good. I hate to tell you, but I hate the dentist. And I was like, oh, nice to meet you too. People seriously say that in a way, and it was lovely to hear this idea of trauma coming up. But dental trauma is something real, because if you have a tooth pain, if you have a toothache, you know it like nothing else in your body. Your body is telling you there is something seriously wrong. Your teeth and your jaws are your most critical physiology. You need to understand exactly what is happening here, or you don't understand the body. And, dentists have, they've somewhat been, there's a bit of a cruelty about it. We're kind of coming out of it, though, because they've had this power over people, and I don't know. I think we're breaking this tech. And I don't know, I felt like you kind of have to take some perspective with it. Some days I was like, oh God, if I see another tooth. But then you kind of think, like, oh, people doing colonoscopies, wow. But we are up to our eyeballs in, there's a lot of talk about climate change at the moment, and one of probably the bigger problems on planet Earth is we are a species that is teetering on self-extinction. And that is, we are so sick that our economic system, our bodies, our entire construct of society is going to collapse. So it's predicted that roughly in 2030, 50 million people in the US will have type 2 diabetes, and this is going to cost in the US trillion. It's going to break the current healthcare system. We are walking off the cliff like zombies. And unless we understand how to fix that, that's going to happen. Probably before a comet hits or before it, we're going to literally fall over dead. And when you look at the patterns, this is a very, very recent phenomena. So in the 60s, 50s and 60s, heart disease and heart attacks popped up. This is when the low-fat Ansel Keys movement came in. But then you see type 2 diabetes and obesity, that's only around since the 80s. You talk to a doctor that was trained before the 80s, they didn't even know what type 2 diabetes was. I talked to someone that he said, we had 1 or 2 lectures. I went out into clinic and people were literally flooding into my clinic with this disease. And all they're doing is handing out medications because they don't understand why it's happening. For type 2 diabetes, you take the sugar out, it's a sugar problem in the blood, high blood sugar, and the insulin settles. It's that simple. But there's another epidemic and further that we're walking into that we don't realize because we don't understand the disease processes. That's sleep disorders and behavioral issues. So if anyone here have themselves a snoring issue or a family member that snores, a child that snores, I think everyone here would know a person that either snores themselves or has a family member that snores. Now, if you do, that's your brain starving of oxygen at night. And so if that doesn't alarm you, then the next, in the studies, what it shows is that sleep apnea is heavily connected to Alzheimer's disease because there's things your brain needs to be doing when you sleep. If you're not breathing right, you only have to do one thing when you're sleeping, and that's breathing. And so if your brain doesn't get to go through its systems because it's managing your airway, and one of the biggest symptoms is teeth grinding and headaches, you wake up with tension, it's because your brain is pulling the jaw forward to open up the airway. Well, that's because it's managing your airway as you sleep, and it's not getting to do all the other things that it needs to. But they've predicted, or this is happening, 2050, we're going to be in the epidemic of Alzheimer's disease. And I don't think there's another arrow box on that, because after we're in an Alzheimer's disease epidemic, because children, 2 to 5% of children now have sleep apnea, so they're going to be getting Alzheimer's disease earlier. This is extinction. And so we're walking off this cliff and we're not noticing. But so in the dental practice, 85% of people who have heart attacks, this literature shows this, they also have gum disease. Gum disease is a long-term inflammatory process that you pick up first up with those bleeding gums, and it turns out that the calcification of the plaque on your teeth also relates to the calcification of the arteries in your cardiovascular system. And so we'll talk about that a little bit, but so if you pick up those early signs, you're not going to have a heart attack. It's that simple. Heart disease didn't exist before the 1950s. You have to rip that out of your head. But when we look at this, when we step back and think, all right, how do we solve this? How do we change this picture? How do we stop our children from being walking off the proverbial extinction cliff? And so what is the biggest health problem on the planet? So does anyone want to have a guess at that? Cancer, Lyme disease. Yeah, so cancer is, that makes a lot of sense, but think about cancer is the end stage. It's a metabolic problem. It's the body's inability to manage its own DNA. That's all it is. So there's processes before. We have to get it. What's before? Stress. What about in kids? Let's go through this because nutrition. But what could you pick up first in kids that's showing that their body isn't quite working how it should be? Think in the mouth. Crooked teeth, yes. Crooked teeth. We are in an epidemic of crooked teeth. If you look at the generations of kids wearing braces, when I went to school, there were 2 kids in my class that had braces. Now, every kid. Crooked teeth is a craniofacial development problem that is stunting our child's airways and their brains to develop. And this has been completely missed because we don't connect. See how your minds were going then? You're thinking, oh, disease, body. It's all in the mouth first. And so braces is the biggest health problem on the planet. And it runs alongside dental disease as being the most prevalent chronic disease. In kids, up to half in the modern world today have tooth decay. 10 million people have wisdom teeth extracted. Wisdom teeth extraction is the same problem as crooked teeth, by the way. It's just pulling out a tooth that doesn't fit in the jaw. And so that happened first, and it's the most common surgical procedure today. You have gum disease. So I take the last teeth out of people in their 30s. They lose their last teeth. This is a serious warning sign of things going wrong in your body. When race horses are bought by, first thing they do, the person obviously spending a lot of money on a horse, what do? Look at the teeth. Of course they look at the teeth. But do you look at your own teeth in terms of, we don't do it. It's this strange block we've got. I'm in my dental practice, I'm trying to educate people with this and saying, hello, this is really, really important. People can just fix the tooth and just, and they just want to be done with it. But what it tells us is the mouth starts to take you into a trip through the body. And so you begin to see, so craniofacial growth, so you look at this skull here, that fits 32 human teeth. You don't see that I don't see that in clinic today, but because it's the craniofacial growth of the maxilla and the mandible. The maxilla sits in this, houses the upper teeth. So when a child has crooked upper teeth, they have a crooked nasal sinus. By definition, less volume to breathe. That's really, 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 really important. But so in the medical sphere, there's been this whole just blindness, and it's amazing you see this in the academic, is that no one has tried to describe the etiology of crooked teeth. They say, oh, it's genetic. It's not genetic. It's not genetic. There's no study to show that. Some people say, oh, it's mixing of races. It's not mixing of races. We'll explain that now. So I actually took some time off dentistry to try and recalibrate what I was doing. Has anyone heard of this book, Nutrition and Physical Degeneration? So there's a couple of people in the room. Probably one of actually no, I'm going to say the most important health book ever written. So, and this is what my book is based on. It's by a dentist named Weston A. Price, who practiced in Cleveland, Ohio. He was Canadian. Canadians they see things in this way. But he also founded the research arm of the American Dental Association. What Price did is he went around the world and he showed that in 14 cultures, in every continent on the planet, as soon as you intercept the modern diet, what pops up? Crooked teeth, tooth decay, of which in people you don't see. So he looked at the anthropological records. This is what I'd never looked at dental anthropology in terms of understanding what was happening in my clinic in everyday today. But he showed that these people didn't have wisdom teeth impactions. They had lovely straight arches. He took 14,000 photos in the 30s. It's a remarkable book. This guy was practicing functional dentistry and medicine before it even existed. He's saying, look, these people eat the right foods and their jaws develop. And he showed it in the ancestors before. The most important health marker on the planet is to show whether we are developing craniofacially. In one generation, as soon as you eat the modern diet, teeth deteriorate. This happens all over the world. Indigenous Australia, New Zealand, Inuit American, North American, the Maasai in Africa. Same thing, same pattern. Teeth deteriorate. But what happens from that is that if you let it go for generations, you get heart attacks, which happened in the 50s. You get type 2 diabetes, which happened in the 80s. In the 2000s, we're in the sleep apnea. And in the 2020s to 30s to 50s, you get Alzheimer's disease because the body's not working properly. So it's a complete misunderstanding of what human health is. And so, but when you look at the dental anthropology, this is the jaws and teeth show us that, rough, and this, actually, the one thing I regret about my book is that, we talk about the agriculture. I've learned a lot more about history since then, which is what, but so this shows us basically that there were two measurable changes in teeth. One is that the agricultural revolution, let's just say that for now, which more or less happened. You start to see tooth decay pop up. but then it really steps up at the Industrial Revolution. That's when we get refined flours, sugars, food, and we're stripping out the nutrients. But so what happens is that you see this change in faces. And if you look at children today, you'll see this long, narrow face, adenoid faces we call them, mouth open posture, tongue hanging out their head, and it's underdeveloped maxillar and mandibular bones. And they won't sleep well. They have these dark circles under the eyes, won't concentrate at school because their brain's in oxygen deprivation, and it's very easy to fix if you understand the problem. Now, anyone heard of the Pottinger cat study? Yeah, it's cats. But so he was the son of a physiologist, and they actually had this. They were testing adrenal gland medicine in cats, and he found that when he fed cats, one group of cats the wrong, raw meat, which is what a cat's digestive system is designed to eat, and then you feed others processed food, they seem to respond differently to the medication. But so. What he found was that the control group stayed healthy and agile for 10 generations, but in the test group, their health deteriorated very quickly. And what we had was that by the 4th generation, they died out. So 4 generations of processed food, the cats died out. And he showed that in generation 1, you start to see this irregular skull development. You see crooked teeth, swollen, inflamed gums, same things I see in the dental office every day. But in generation 2, they start to get smaller and their bones start to decrease. And this is what people missed in this study, is that the first signs is calcium deposition. The most crucial marker of health that you can take for a human is whether your body is depositing calcium. Because you think about the physiology, if your body isn't supporting its skeletal system, that's the most important thing you can do to support your organs and so forth. So if your body can't do that, then you're in severe, what I call nutrient deficiency. And so calcium levels of the bones went from 100% to 1% in 3 generations. Now, is that alarming? And in the 4th generation, these 3rd generation, they were infertile. They couldn't, and the rates of fertility today in society, does anyone know those numbers? 20%? Yeah. This is happening today. And so what he found was that when he put those 3rd generation cats back on the normal diet, it took 4 generations to fix. And that's something called epigenetics, and so it takes time to heal DNA. We talked about trauma a little. There's some healing that we have to do now. Price showed the same thing. So this is comparing a modern skull I think this is a Peruvian skull, compared to previous generations. Look at the thickness of those skulls. That's calcium deposition. I see this every day in the practice. You take wisdom teeth out of a 16 to 25-year-old, their cortical bone in the angle of their mandible is paper thin. It's the same thing. Your body is not placing calcium. We know that vitamin D deficiency causes bones not to grow. It happened in the late 1800s. That's how we discovered vitamin D itself. So in cod liver oil, they isolated vitamin A and vitamin D because kids were having rickets. Now, this was Price's main theorem. He said that ancient cultures all over the world ate foods rich in fat-soluble vitamins. Why? Because fat-soluble vitamins place calcium. They do a lot of other things, as it turns out. But he says it's this basic. You eat these foods, and they ate foods 20 times as rich in vitamin A and vitamin D. Does anyone here know if they eat foods rich in vitamin A and D? We have. If you don't, there's a couple. If you don't, I guarantee you do not, because the modern diet does not provide it. And he also noted the interesting story about prices, which is what humans have a funny way of, when we understand the flow of how everything went. Price died 10 years after he published. And he found that he went back to his labs from all these samples of food, and he found vitamin D and vitamin A, 20 times rich, but also this other activator, and it was called activator X. And he died, poor guy, he died before he found out what it was. But it took 70 years. His book was lost, and it wasn't until 2007 that we found out that activator X, anyone know what activator X is? It's a vitamin. K, yeah, but it's a type of K. K2. So vitamin K is a group of nutrients, it turns out. We're only told about the K1, that's the phyloquinones. Menaquinones are K2, and activator X was a type of K2 that when kids eat them and when expecting couples eat these 3 nutrients, they have children that look like the face above. When you don't, things start to deteriorate. And this is what you see in the mouth. See those big tonsils? That's all the breathing, but that's a craniofacial issue. And so that's an immune system inflamed. That's a poorly developed craniofacial system that doesn't allow nasal breathing. And what happens is that the whole system doesn't work. It self-perpetuates. The kid mouth breathes to sleep. We get behavioral disorders, metabolic issues, everything under the sun because we're not seeing this problem. Now, we see these warnings in the Dutch hunger winter between 44 and 45 when the Nazis roadblocked the Netherlands. There was actually a study ensuing because there was 3 months where the Dutch hunger winter actually caused starvation in the population, a tragic story. But the medical records actually showed that during this time, if a pregnant woman went through the malnutrition period, if the baby was in the first trimester, the child would be and had the starvation period, the child would have a long-term obesity and diabetes risk, but it was born normal size. So then you would track down the road that it had a risk of diabetes. Second trimester, if the starvation happened then, it was a small baby. And what this showed was that a starvation, that the message of nutrient restriction will actually tell the genes to restrict and to change the expression of the child because it's telling us about the environment. And so our genes are listening, and these nutrients, you have to know the most crucial nutrients to talk to those genes for the body to grow and develop as it should. And jaws now, kids, if you look at babies born now, you see these set recessed chins. That's because our genes are telling the jaws, or it's telling us the nutrients aren't there. You can't grow the jaws like they should. There's some studies coming out of the anthropological faculty in Pennsylvania showing that jaws in newborn babies anthropologically were much better developed than they are today. Now, vitamin D deficiency, this science only came up in about 2000. The problem is that when you don't have the whole picture, you don't understand it. Vitamin D does way more than just deposit calcium. There's 25,000 genes in the human body, 3,000 contain vitamin D receptors. And just as a snapshot, I know most of you probably from whether it's Southern California where there's lots of sun. Even in Southern California and Australia, we are in an epidemic of vitamin D deficiency. And so this detects you right down to, there's rickets in Australia. We have kids with rickets in Australia. Oh, what? Yeah, the reaction is, this is alarming because what vitamin D does, it's so critical, and this is what takes us to our next step. The telomere length, our aging, vitamin D, your body is listening to how much vitamin D is. Where does vitamin D come from? The sun, the star. Vitamin D deficiency underlies every chronic disease under the sun. MS is geographically distributed away from the equator. You see autoimmune, digestive, osteoporosis, cancer. It's a DNA regular, the whole thing. It's vitamin D deficiency. But there's a lot of other things that go along. But you always find vitamin D deficiency alongside. Let's ram this home. Crooked teeth are caused by nutritional deficiency. Vitamin K2, this is what the nutrients look like. K1 comes from green leafy vegetables. K2 comes from, there's two types. Menaquinone 4 is an animal, it's produced. So Price found in the Lochenschul Valley in Switzerland, he found that the people would take the cows up to the fast-growing grass in the spring-growing grass on the Swiss Alps. And they would make sure they ate this green grass. Why? Because it had the K1. And their digestive system is designed to convert to the K2. So the butter he found that he took back to his lab was 20 times richer in activator X, which was K2, which is an activator of calcium. So what vitamin K2 does is it activates two proteins, matrix GLA protein and osteocalcin, which then carry calcium. So without vitamin K2, you don't get those receptors binding calcium. You don't place calcium into bones and teeth. Calcium floats around where it shouldn't be. What do you think would be the fastest way to detect that your body's not processing calcium? As a guess. Sorry? That's not the fastest. It's definitely it's in the mouth. Sorry? It's in the mouth. Sorry? Plaque. Calculus. I'll just skip back to. You know that calculus you get built up behind that's because of the salivary duct calculus. If your body doesn't have enough K2, the plaque, which is designed to be that we know that we're trillions of microbes, and the microbes are there, they're doing a job, telling you don't have enough K2. That's happening in your arteries as well. So one of the most powerful cardiovascular tests today is the coronary calcium score. Anyone had that? So it's a CT where they check how calcified your artery is. Really, really important. But so what they understand now is heart disease isn't a problem of fatty cholesterol being clogged up in the arteries. It's a problem of calcification. You get bone spindle formation because the body can't process the calcium, can't put the calcium where it needs to go. That's the problem. That's what dental disease shows us. In the clinic today, we can change this. So this is the OPG of a roughly 10-year-old. And so they're going through the biggest growth phase of their life. If you pick this up fast, now there are growth issues. See how the canines are kind of pointed that way? And how all these teeth are trying to get in? That's what crooked teeth looks. But if you pick it up now and you look at that child, how they sleep, how they breathe, how they eat, then you can change it. Myofunctional orthodontics can actually change. We do this in the clinic. It's hard because there's a lot of behavior, breathing, so forth that goes forward. You can straighten teeth without braces. But the important thing is that you're setting their craniofacial growth, their brain case, in order for them to develop, to have a stable sleep pattern, endocrine system. It's the most important marker of human health. How we do that, we get them to breathe through the nose. We have devices that force them to breathe through the nose, and they eventually learn. But then the tongue is very crucial, and this is what we'd start looking. The tongue is the most complex muscle system in the body. It slings from the hyoid bone to the back of the skull to the mandible, and when you hold it up to the roof of the mouth very high, it opens like a tent. So that's the tongue posture that supports your airway at night. And actually for sleep apnea, there's a study that shows that men who play the Australian didgeridoo actually can reverse sleep apnea. And why? Because they learn the cyclical breathing. And the mouth breathing, we teach nasal breathing, but what you learn is management of the airways. This is a volume, this is an instrument we have. That's what sleep apnea is. It's the tongue falling back in the throat. It's just vibration of the air, that's all. And it's dangerous because it's stopping your brain go through those deep levels of sleep. It's very important, REM, self-regulation, digestive, immune regulation. If you're trying to heal anything, you have to heal your sleep. So this is where we're at. There's currently an argument going on between the orthodontic community don't like this because it kind of shows that what they've been doing for a while isn't, they've been making a lot of money off kids with braces. But you fix this first and you put the nutrients in the system right, people develop craniofacially by itself. And this is something we need to implement at population level because you can't manage this. It's hard to manage, it's hard to reverse. And remember the cats, it takes 4 generations to heal. It has to be built into our food systems, into our healthcare practitioners. Otherwise, it's going to be difficult. This is what Price showed us, is that there's this system driving. You eat these nutrients, all of this happens on its own, and you put these principles into play, these kids develop. And so the next generation doesn't have to suffer from the maladies that the last generations have. So when we look back to this progression of chronic disease, at the start of it was tooth decay and crooked teeth. That was the sign things were going wrong. Our bodies were trying to tell us, hey, you're not feeding us the right things. Your ancestors told you to have cod liver oil and organ meats and egg yolks and get in the sun and they have the nutrients that build bone broths. You think about all the traditional cuisines, they all have these sacred foods. We've just stripped them out. Okay, so that was a really quick, we can go through, you can see there's levels of, but that's basically what my book's about. Functional dentistry is about merging functional medicine. It's about understanding the body in a way that it's very simple. Once you look at the mouth, it tells you everything about the body, and I've found that it changes the way you look at the world too, because once I kind of opened my perspective to this, I started to see some things about people that talk in this room, and I'm like, whoa, there's other problems elsewhere too. Anyway, so the pineal gland is something it's been hitting me for a while now to talk about, and I have never really mentioned it because it's something, you're not really taught about the pineal gland in medical or dental school, but it's been floating around now, and there's something coming out of me that says I need to talk about this. And connecting with Walter was actually, we had a conversation, And I was talking about, oh, there's these myths in Australia about two sons, and he's like, oh, I like your dental thing. Why don't you talk about the dental thing? And then I thought about it, I was like, oh yeah, that makes a lot more sense. In adult palatal expansion, this is the first time it hit me. So we can change the maxilla in adults too. Elderly adults, we can reverse sleep apnea, change their posture, change their faces, so you can change the symmetry of the face by expanding the palate. It takes a long time, it's hard, but you can change that. So there's a suture there that will grow bone just by pressure. Tongue pressure, you learn to breathe, changes the whole physiology of the craniofacial system, because we get postural issues, we get back issues, neck problems. So I was looking at it with a dentist in New York. We're doing his cases, very smart guy, very intuitive guy, but showing this in adults. There's a lot of people doing this in kids, but he was showing that people were getting more symmetrical faces after doing this for 12 to 18 months. And I was like, wow, that's amazing. Like their eyes would line up and the other side of the mandible would grow bone, and you're just expanding the maxilla. The maxilla is the central piece of growth of the craniofacial. It takes all the messages of breathing. So the 20,000 breaths you take through, that grows the maxilla. The pressure of the tongue to the roof of the mouth, that grows the maxilla. You fix that, and then everything else starts to line up too. But notice these craniofacial symmetries. Where was this discussed yesterday? The Vitruvian man. They were talking about the sacred geometry of the thirds of the face. And that's what hit me. We're going to go through this, is that I learned there are some critical things that Vitruvian man's been bothering me for many years now. But there's another layer of that, is that he's talking about human physiology as well. Is that when you understand the physiology, the beauty of the face, why human faces, Hollywood actors have such chiseled, cheekbones and angles of the jaw, it's because it tells us of the Fibonacci code and that your body is growing to nature's symmetry. But when you change the palate of an adult, and you scan their brain with a CT, their body with a CT, the sphenoid bone changes as well. So you grow symmetry in the sphenoid bone when you change the craniofacial structure of an adult. This is in 60-year-old women, we saw this too. What's in the sphenoid bone? It's the base of the brain. It's the most sacred, most important part of the human body that we've never talked about. Look where it sits. Right behind the eyes, the yellow part, right at the base of the brain, plugs right in. It's the keystone of the skull. You know what a keystone is, where those Greek arches and the last stone fits, the whole thing stands together? That's what the sphenoid bone does. All of the main vessels go through there. The endocrine system sits in there. When we have maxillary and craniofacial systems that are asymmetrical, the sphenoid bone is asymmetrical, which means the brain is asymmetrical. And there's two unpaired glands in the brain that will rely on symmetry. What would they be? Pituitary, which sits in the sella tertia. So at the front there, the pituitary sits in like a little cup, and it's squeezed. The bones squeeze and move, and so the sphenoid bone actually squeezes the pituitary gland to release all of your endocrine organs. At the back is and this anatomy isn't well discussed, is the pineal fossa, where the pineal gland actually hangs out in cerebrospinal fluid. So the sphenoid bone is the balance between the daytime pituitary gland hormones and the pineal gland, which is the melatonin release, the nighttime consciousness, sitting in cerebrospinal fluid that is directing the entire endocrine system. We were told that the endocrine system starts at the hypothalamus. It doesn't. The pineal gland is the key regulator of the endocrine system. But the pituitary gland, there's many problems with pituitary gland issues today, but the sphenoid bone is the physical milking process of how this happens, and that's via posture, via breathing. You can actually send vibrations to that via posture and breathing every second that you swallow, every time. So the pineal health requires symmetry, requires your bones to be developed, and it requires your muscles to be stable, it requires your brain to be oxygenated, it requires your cells to be nourished, And it requires a mind that understands that the pineal gland does other things too. So we've heard of the term the third eye. This is physiologically proven now. There is a pathway that goes through the retinas, to the hypothalamus, through the suprachiasmatic nucleus, to the pineal gland via light. And the pineal gland manages this. As soon as the sun rises on the horizon, your pineal gland will start to flip melatonin to serotonin. So it's a little machine takes an amino acid tryptophan, converts it to serotonin, which is your daytime hormones, which regulates everything throughout the body, heavily connected to vitamin D3. And then once that sun goes down, darkness as a nutrient, as a message, an alchemic message, then everything starts to flip to melatonin. It takes 4 hours for those blood levels to rise. Then you start to feel sleepy, you go to sleep. You enter other states of consciousness. The endocrine system is directed by the pineal gland. And what we now find is that there are papers and papers and papers and papers on melatonin and what it does to every system in the body. It's the most powerful antioxidant in the digestive system, in the anti-stress for adrenal issues, for inflammation, for obesity. It makes you lose weight. It's an anti-cancer agent. Melatonin breaks cancers down, stops the progression of cancers, because when you sleep, the body goes and regulates the DNA, and it tells the other it's a vibration. And it's a vibration taken in from light. And what I was looking at all this stuff, and I was like, how does this all connect? And it hit me one day that it's all an alchemic process. And so what I learned from Price and the body and the physiology is that we are living, breathing machines that need the correct energy input. And so when the sun rises and the light comes in through your retina, the vitamin A cycle is yoked. Vitamin A, what happens is that it'll take vitamin A out of the blood. So that's why you need vitamin A, and why night blindness is associated with vitamin A deficiency. And vitamin A is one of the most, we're told it's so bad. It's one of the most crucial nutrients, that we need. And the World Health Organization actually goes to third world countries supplementing vitamin A because it cures night blindness. Why we don't do this in our countries today, I don't know. But we need that connection back to vitamin A. At night time, the pineal gland releases melatonin. It's this amazing day and night symmetry of darkness and light and the process of consciousness as well. Your pineal gland is measuring the heavenly body. So when the sun is watching when the sun goes, the hormones are changing as the sun moves. The moon as well. The studies show that at full moon, melatonin drops. You don't sleep as well on the full moon, do you? And the reason is because the moon affects your hormones. Fertility is associated with the moon. So women who menstruate, you're supposed to menstruate around the new moon, and then you procreate around the full moon, because that's when the energy is in the waters, when you think of all the tides moving. This affects your inner physiology, and hormones are moving with the solar system. It's all moving together. Vitamin D, I realized, and I was like, what is this connection? Why is this pineal gland so important? It hit me one day. Vitamin D3 is stored light. And actually, I've listened to Robert Schoch's lectures, and he talks about how, they talk about this death and connecting to the sun. We are connecting to the sun every day. You're a system. You've got this whole amazing photosynthesis-like system to send vitamin D3 from your skin to stored D3 in the liver. It's light. You're storing light. You're a light machine. And the pineal gland is using this light to yoke serotonin, which yokes melatonin, and to make the most crucial physiological aspects of your body. Bone. Bone's fundamental. You don't have bone, you're a floppy, unless you're as soon as we get onto land, as soon as we evolve to walk on land, you need bone. And so that's why it's so crucial that these pure forms of energy from light, the sun, that we convert bone, and we create bone and teeth, and strong teeth, and you don't get dental abscesses that will kill you in the wild. I've been avoiding this picture for a long time. Has anyone seen this online? So this is a CT scan, MRI, sorry, of a brain, and it's showing a calcified pineal gland. And so what happens is that I've been throwing fluoride on kids' teeth and telling people to have fluoride for most of my career. Fluoride integrates into tooth enamel. That's what it does. That's what we know it does to prevent tooth decay. But there's a calcium system there that it integrates into as well, which integrates into the most sensitive part of your body, the pineal gland. The pineal gland has a unique blood-brain barrier that is sensitive, and it picks up, so it's very much, sits on the same element column as iodine, and fluoride integrates into the calcium system, into cardiovascular cells. So in China, they show fluoride populations have more heart attacks because of the calcification of the cardiovascular system. In the pineal gland, it builds up. We know it does. It's just we've not admitted that it actually does anything. So this is, if you've had any exposure to fluoride, most people here I think are probably reasonably awake to that, but there are other factors to this as well. So Alzheimer's disease is heavily associated with calcification issues. Vitamin K2, there are ways the body can clear this. The body can clear this all out. It can do it. You just need to know why. Light deficiency, light straight to the retinas, straight to the pineal to help yoke the vitamin A cycle that yokes the vitamin D to serotonin to melatonin cycle, which the melatonin clears it all out. This is all ancient knowledge. I came across this, it was actually, I was talking to Carmen on the first night, and I was like, God, this stuff's been bugging, and she's like, oh, I'm presenting on the Denderas. I was like, that's been bugging me for so long. And she goes, oh, that's because you were there. And she's right that these things stay with you, but there are these ancient stories of the pineal gland showing that they had a much better understanding of human physiology than we do. And this is the point that's been missed in this whole discussion about the ancients. They knew our body better, and you can't argue with it. You can't argue with that. We can, if you can fix people in weeks, there's no talking about dating or anything like that. The first thing we need to do is to fix ourselves and to understand how the body works in order to fix the whole problem which is facing planet Earth. This is written in a book that was honoured by Andy Exty. He worked with John Anthony West and of Robert Schoch as well. And the work that John Anthony West did to revive this text is unbelievable. He translated it from French. It is one of the most complex descriptions of cosmology to history, to sacred geometry, to harmony, to music. But the beauty of it is it's written in human physiology as well. And the craniofacial anatomy written in the Temple of Man tells us exactly why the priest would sit in the part of the temple where the pineal gland vibrates at a certain frequency. And they talk about the initiates going through the levels of the temple, and eventually you understand how sacred your body is, and how sacred and how our consciousness doesn't come from the brain. Consciousness comes from somewhere else. We're pretty much there scientifically. We haven't exactly admitted it, but when you connect and you take all the problems away, everything dissolves and you enter a higher state, the temple in man. One thing about Chris Dunn is he showed this amazing symmetry. Look at that symmetry of that. What they're showing is that these pharaohs knew exactly what the human form is. If you look at the symmetry of those cheekbones, think of the strength and the understanding of the development of the craniofacial bones. This is a powerful, powerful brain. And when he breathes and when he understands consciousness and meditation, this is a person that can enter higher states of consciousness. Tongue posture is very important. The human homunculus takes up roughly, there's 30 to 35% involving the lips, mouth, and tongue. And there's postures that develop. Every time you swallow, you grow and you send vibrations back through the maxilla to the sphenoid bone. You need to learn to use these muscles. Breathing pumps cerebrospinal fluid to the brain. So when you take an exhale, the decreasing pressure in the thorax pumps cerebrospinal fluid up the spinal column past the pineal gland. Charged, pure cerebrospinal fluid, when you breathe and close your eyes, is seeing at a vibration, at a frequency, the frequency that you will allow it to pass the pineal gland. It's a really important part of the physiology, the vibrational part. There's the chemicals and everything inside, but you have to understand there's the physical and the breath connection to the pineal as well, because you don't get the full activation unless you see that. And that's why I'm telling you this, because once you understand the physiology, it's in you, it changes how it works within you as well. Meditation and the pineal activation, it throws melatonin through the body. They show this in monks. They can just sit there and they can access it straight away, like a state of deep theta activation. Now neurophysiologists are measuring all the collective brain waves of what all of the cells are doing in the brain. And so we know that in deep theta and delta states, we enter other states of consciousness. That's what people can do in states of meditation. Sound and voice vibration, the larynx, the vibration of the maxilla. So humming releases nitric oxide from the nasal sinuses, a crucial part of the respiration cycle. Nitric oxide actually helps perfuse the lungs and helps bring blood to the barrier of respiration. If you breathe through the mouth, you don't get that. And so vibration and sound helps the brain to connect to the respiratory system, which carbon dioxide, by the way, is heavily connected to. You have to be okay with the rise of carbon dioxide. So the rise of carbon dioxide, the relaxation of all the muscles, and then the respiration system, the Bohr curve then allows all the oxygen to be dumped onto hemoglobin. And when we do this, this is science now, that brain waves change. When people do this, we can send the brain into a state away from the monkey mind, away from the frontal lobe, where we access other things. There's a deeper story to this. Serotonin is a group of, so the molecules that are involved in this, in the process of the pineal gland, serotonin, melatonin, they're tryptamines. There's another molecule called DMT, which is known, everyone's probably familiar with Rick Strassman's work, to create what we call a psychedelic experience. But so there is endogenous DMT. So what we're missing is there's physiology of the pineal gland showing that the respiratory system releases endogenous DMT. We can likely, they've isolated DMT in mammalian just a few months ago, brain, so we know it's there. And there's new papers coming out showing the gut microbiome responds to DMT, and that's why ayahuasca, for instance, has this digestive benefit. But we are now understanding, we're only just at the brink of admitting it, that DMT plays a critical role. And what I think this is it's another vibrational molecule. And so we have this amazing vibration of day and night serotonin and melatonin, but DMT, likely released when you dream during REM states of sleep, releases a state of consciousness. So dreaming is likely related to how your pineal gland is using these very small chemicals. Melatonin, so your body is listening to all of the cycles in the universe at the same time. Most rudimentarily, we can say the sun and the moon. Melatonin decreases during the full moon, is why you don't sleep. Your fertility cycles, your endocrine system changes with the vibration. That's why lunisolar calendars were so prevalent, and we've lost that today. Our calendar does not track, and our calendar system is all out everyone here knows that. But what that does, it changes, it knocks you off the rhythm of the universe, and that's important because your physiology, now, the physiology depends on it. It depends on knowing where those astronomical bodies are and how it affects your insides. So I think what we're moving into is that this is a very difficult thing. When I first read Walter's work, I was like, wow, this is amazing. And with dentistry, like healthcare information, you have to weed through there's a lot of stuff out there, a lot of noise. The really important things, a dental lens really helped me to see what's important, so you cling to what's important. When I saw Walter's work and the Binary Research Institute, the binary star hypothesis, or concept, and precession, the cause of precession, it hit me like it was like a freight train. I was like, this is really, really, really important. And eventually, it was only in the last few months it hit, is that the answers are in our brain. if we are connected via a second star system, then the physiology is there. And in the past times that we've lived, when we are closer or in different times of energy, the physiology opens up and it is all there and it's happening. We are awakening to this. This is a process that we can access and understand. There are higher abilities of the mind. We know it. It's science. It's right there, all in the. We just need to put it in a way that the Western mind can just click it in and say, yep, this is confirmed, this is confirmed, this is confirmed, and then we can change this via understanding the own evidence lies within our brain. This idea, this picture of Akhenaten, connecting to the sun, this is synonymous. What he's talking about is a deep interconnection. The Maya talks of the same thing. The messages that the frequencies of the sun, and you can go deep into talking about how this affects your consciousness, quantum mechanics and so forth. That there are very, very subtle and very, very powerful impacts happening within the brain. And so, to finish off, I thought that we would pick up with a very quick activation of our pineal gland. Would everyone like to do that? So the first things we're going to do, so you can either sit straight on your seat, or if you feel better, stand up. Just loosen up a little bit because you've been sitting a long time. Now, the first thing we're going to do, and this came to me while watching Robert's and Alan's presentation on the Vitruvian Man, is there are places that we can activate, and they've been telling us that the body activates in certain places. And do you remember the Vitruvian Man presentation where he pointed to that spot that wasn't marked by? So the belly button has a gland called the Picotti gland, and it's connected to when you're born. What's the placenta? Yeah. So your placenta is connected to the Picotti gland. So it's one of the highest concentrations of blood vessels sitting right under your belly button. So what I want you to first do, just take some deep breaths, just loosen the shoulders, feel at ease where you are. I want you to take your thumb and press hard on your belly button. It's going to feel painful, and you're going to push past the threshold of pain. You're going to push past that threshold. It's going to feel sore. You're going to go past that, not too sore, and push it and push it and push it. You're going to feel a deep spinal. And then just let that go and let that push through the body. You've just released a lot of different neurotransmitters from your gut. The second was mentioned by Carmen. She showed the ram with the thymus. The thymus sits here on the breastbone. And so just below, and it's marked exactly on the Vitruvian Man. He goes, there, it's marking the chakras. So you press right on, what you're doing is the thymus sends out T cells, which is your adaptive immune system. But what I think the thymus does is it's the respiratory. I think it activates DMT into your lungs. And so what you do is you press on the breastbone. Same again. You're going to push, so there's pressure there. And just push down, past the point of pain. Just breathe through it. Just feel the pressure, and then let go. Just feel how that's your body's energy system starting to use its molecules the way it's designed to. The last is in the floor of the mouth. And so what you're going to do is there's two glands here, the submandibular and sublingual gland that release all your salivary glands. But so what you can actually do, there are a number of points in the mouth, but I want to try this one today because I think it releases a pretty important part of activating high minds. And so what you do, take your thumb and press the floor of the mouth. So the mylohyoid muscle is at the floor of the neck here. And so you're going to press down. It's going to be quite painful, and you're going to press through that pain. You're going to feel two releases. One's a sublingual, then one's a submandibular gland. Under the tongue, into the floor of the mouth, and you're pushing the foot. It feels like a choking sensation. Down. Down and back a little bit, yeah. If you have a restriction, it's going to be a bit harder. That's a whole other topic. Past the point of pain. Okay, so now take some deep breaths. Get in your comfy zone, standing or sitting. Try to have a straight spine. Remember the cerebrospinal fluid. I want you to take some deep belly breaths, like a balloon, into your diaphragm. A big balloon into your diaphragm. Slow exhales. Just feel how those pressure points have changed your body slightly. Breathe through it. Now, when you're breathing, I want you to picture all of the fantastic information and mind-blowing things that people have been doing have entered into your brain. Picture your brain, all those neurons as light. All those trillions of light, your brain as pure light. Taking in, processing, thinking, what am I going to do with this? It's all light, and it's coming to a point. And it's concentrating at the center of your brain in the pineal gland. And think of that light collecting to a singularity. It's increasing in frequency, and as it gets lighter and lighter and lighter, it starts to vibrate, and there's a vibration there. Just feel what that vibration is. Hear, feel, and you're looking at a singularity of light in your pineal gland. Now what we're going to do is activate the voice. So when you activate the larynx, the sphenoid bone flutters like a butterfly, and the pineal gland flutters with. So when you activate and you understand and you use that energy, that frequency, we're going to be fluttering the pineal gland and the energy within that you've just stored. So this is a mantra, Jaya Bhagavan. Jaya means victory, hail, celebration. Bhagavan means inner guiding light, source, family, love. When you say Jaya Bhagavan, you are connecting to the source, to the love that guides you through the darkness. But the light is coming, it's coming back. So repeat after me. Jaya Bhagavan. Jaya Bhagavan. Jaya Bhagavan. Jaya Bhagavan. And now together with me. Jaya Bhagavan. Jaya Bhagavan. Jaya Bhagavan. Jaya Bhagavan. So sit with the energy. The vibrations move you in a deep way. The voice and the bones and the muscles and everything that has contributed to being here, and the thinking and it all vibrates in a way that we can access and that we can change our next generation. We can teach this to our children. We can make sure they don't have crooked teeth. I stuffed cod liver oil down his mouth like he loves it too. These were the points off the... So my book is The Dental Diet, but so we're working to bring this together. The human physiology is really important. The archaeologists and the brilliant people doing the math and you know, the anthropology, it's important, but we have to connect the human physiology and the story. We have to align our own systems inside ourselves in order to change this, because if we don't, I think this problem is going to be hard to fix without that alignment. If we are looking at doing systems and programs where we help people to align, it takes some time to take out disease. Now, if you're looking at visiting Göbekli Tepe, I highly recommend you go with Robert Schoch, because he is you'll get a far deeper archaeological, and I'm hoping to go with him too. But one thing we're doing is working with a Turkish group in order to bring out the deep messages that were sent there. I believe they are talking about pineal activation and the higher states of consciousness, and so with the Human Origin Project, we will be beginning to take people to practice, to learn, and to activate themselves. You have to do. One thing about Walter that I really like is that he's a doer. You know, we can talk about, we can read books, but we have to be able to activate these things in society, or it's never, ever, ever going to change. And, you know, he made a prediction, you know, it's going to take 10 or 15 years. No, it's got to be faster than that. We have to make it faster. And if you create the inner importance on how it applies to your health today, I think it can move faster. Thank you very much, and it's been a pleasure meeting you all.